All right, what's up, Story Geeks? Welcome to the channel today. Welcome to our live video today. If you are joining us on the podcast in a few days, welcome as well. My name is Tim Wozni. I am afraid of the space spiders that we saw this week. Yes, there will be spoilers. Today we're going to be talking about all the Easter eggs that we have seen in the first and second seasons of The Mandalorian, and looking a whole lot at the Easter eggs that we've seen in the first two episodes of this season. Also, welcome to the show today, Nick, the Frog Eggy, Rebel Scum Nataly, and Cilla, the Jedi Apprentice. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
So, just hot first take. What did all of you guys think of the first two episodes so far?
I thought they were fun. I really liked the first episode. It felt like it was a little weird to have kind of a filler episode for the second one, but it was a fun filler episode. So I really enjoyed both of them. And so I'm hoping that next week on episode 3, it's going to start kicking off a really, really awesome storyline.
Definitely agree with episode 2. It was odd to get such an early filler episode, but there were so many elements of it that I loved. You, judging by my name, should know I will get really happy anytime I see X-Wings pop up. So
Yeah.
that would always make my day. But episode 1 just recaptured my wonder for the show right away. I loved it so much.
Again, I think to echo everyone's sentiments, I really enjoyed the first episode. That was really well done. The second one is a bit filler, but nothing that I despise, despite not really liking spiders. So that point I was like, I do think it's interesting though, and I don't know if it could be out of left field, but both episodes feel like B horror movies, like in the sense of like you basically have tremors in the first episode, and then you have giant spiders in the second. So I thought that was a little interesting, but I'm hoping we get into the full story mode on episode 3.
Yeah, well, I echo the same sort of thoughts that it felt a little weird that the second episode felt a little fillery, but at the same time, and I may be a little alone in this, I really enjoyed some of the horror elements that were brought into Rise of Skywalker. And so to see some more of those horror elements brought back in Mandalorian was a lot of fun. And I think a welcome addition to different parts of the Star Wars universe. So while I agree that it was I was a little bummed that it was filler and that it felt very short, and it was short in the first episode, I still had a lot of fun with it. The spiders are very, very scary and disgusting and everything of that. Before we dive into everything else, thank you again, everybody, for listening in. The Story Geeks YouTube channel is produced by the Reclamation Society, so be sure that you subscribe for more in-depth perspectives on geek content. And this is your last spoiler warning. From here on out, we are just full speed, straight into the spoilers, diving in through all the good details. So if you haven't seen the first 2 episodes and want to, now is your chance to get away. Just setting the ground floor area, what were some of your guys' favorite moments, Easter eggs, references to other Star Wars memorabilia in the first season?
I think my favorite one in the first season is the first time we see the Mandalorian go into the Mos Eisley Cantina, and all the human workers are replaced with droids, because we remember from A New Hope, they said they don't like droids there. We don't like their kind. And to see them years later replaced by droids is just hilarious and awesome. And you get to see that awesome set again, not as full as it used to be, but I like little callbacks like that. It's kind of the stuff that I love in Star Wars, extended universe programming, and also in like Rebels and Clone Wars, is when you can kind of not full on like really wink at the audience, but like if you know sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that kind of stuff.
I think my favorite is the Dark Saber, that was thrown at us at the very end, but it's the first time we've seen like such a connection to the animated series.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I just got so excited and so thrilled that like they were even more so connecting to them, and it was not expected at all. But I know that it means that we're going to get a little more in touch with the Mandalorian culture and trying to figure out exactly what it is, because we've kind of gotten a convoluted sense of what Mandalorian culture is across the entire trilogy, as well as like the uncanonization of the extended universe and recovering that. So the Dark Saber, I know and I hope is going to be like a very vital part of all that.
Right.
I like the Dark Saber a lot, and also this is super random, but I really like you see the Imperial troop transporter in that last episode in season 1. Just because I know it was in Rogue One, that it wasn't officially canon before, but then they made it a toy, which I'm a big collector nerd. So then seeing that they basically made something and put it in, the shows for that purpose or in the canon was pretty cool to see.
Justin Weaver commented a similar thought on Facebook, and yes, that seeing that from the old toy that it was put into Rebels and then put into real physical tangible objects in Mandalorian was really special, and kind of neat that from both Dave Filoni and from Jon Favreau, just that there's a dedication in that to the entire picture, including all the little niche references.
Even in Empire Strikes Back, the guy that's running with the ice cream maker.
Yeah,
they make that. Yeah, and they make that the Beskar like holder. I think they even had it in episode 1 of this season of Mandalorian.
Yes, where he grabs it off the back of the mining guild speeder and full of crystals and books it out into the desert. I really, really enjoyed the Dark Saber, especially as a Rebels and Clone Wars fan. The progression of the Mandalorians through those two series, and then especially revolving around the Dark Saber, was really exciting to see at the end of episode 8, season 1, and just like, oh my gosh, I kind of know where this is going. And just that's, I think, sort of the one of the like the peak ways that these Easter eggs work throughout Mandalorian is just either as references for context or as foreshadowing elements that, as you said, Nick, if you know, and you're in it and you're there. I also really loved the moment where the monkey lizard is watching the other monkey lizard get roasted, and it's just that little bit of Jabba's palace that's carried over to this small town, and just the horror and the just sort of the one of those gruesome moments that you're like, I'm a little surprised that's in there, but also fantastic.
Yeah. Well, what's great is the respect that Jon Favreau has for what came before, that's what I feel like makes great for in these Star Wars shows and extended universe books that are still canon, is taking what came before with like great respect and just adding on to it, is just a cool thing, because then that's where you can get little nods that, where you see the ice cream maker from Empire Strikes Back and things like that. And but also important story landmarks like the Dark Saber is a very important landmark, important object in Rebels, because the last time you see it is at a very pivotal moment in Rebels, having it get passed on to seemingly the rightful place, and to see it show up later in somebody else's hands is like, well, what happened? And it's that interconnectivity between shows and stuff. It's not like they go, oh well, we just go off the movies, because even Marvel has its interconnected universe, but it's like they seem to only like to reference each other through film, and they go, well, the TV show is just kind of the TV show
for now.
And for now. But I feel like it's really great that in Star Wars we're getting that respect of like of other things that came before and bringing it along and adding new things to it and moving forward. It's just pretty great.
I think that with the respect of all the material, I think it attracts, diehards and maybe new fans alike. I would say I'm a Star Wars novice compared to a lot of people, but I think this show has intrigued me so much along with all the movies that, it keeps wanting you to research more or look into it more, which, that's hard for a show to do that has such a storied history to, attract people in that way.
Right.
There's sort of along the lines of the Dark Saber for me in the first season, and I did not put this together until I was doing some extra research this morning. Dr. Pershing in the first season has a patch on his sleeve. That patch is the cloning facilities on Kamino's logo, and I did not know that until this morning. And so that was one of those moments, like with the Dark Saber, where there's what's happened. There's a huge chunk of time that needs to be filled in, and I forget what Din Djarin calls it in Mando, where Mandalore falls, and presumably that's where Moff Gideon gets Dark Saber from. But the whole detail and this minute connection to the cloning facilities, I'm really hoping is one of those that, like the Dark Saber, is going to come a little bit more full circle and give us a bigger picture of the broader strokes of the Galactic Civil War.
Yeah, there's some things going on. Like, we think we've got the in-between of each movie, and I think it's cool that in Mandalorian are showing, there's a little more that you didn't know about. Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think that's, like I say, I think as a narrative device, that's where the Easter eggs are at their strongest, is when they're hinting at what those gaps might be. So we're only 2 episodes into this second season of Mandalorian, but what were some of your favorite Easter eggs so far? What were the ones that really, really stuck out to you, made you smile, made you laugh? What worked well in the Easter eggs for you?
R5's appearance was one that made me immediately giddy. More so because the book, from a certain point of view, is one of the most delightful reads that you could ever read, because it gives you these little niche, minute stories to the everyday background characters that may only pop up. And R5 is one of them. And if you read the book, you'd know that there is a lot more to him than just coincidentally popping a motivator right before he's about to get sold and separate and R2 from one another. And to see that he survives everything from the attack on his Ewok barge to the entire war, it just makes me delightfully happy that the small little kind acts can come back to you in really big favors by living a fantastic life. So there he is, and
there we do have a photo of R5 and R2 all spending some time together with some Jawas.
And before R2 goes off and does some fantastic things, continues to do so, but R5 is a true little underdog hero, and seeing him just made me so very happy. And you can attest, my fiance can attest to that. I'm a very big R5 fan.
Cilla?
Okay. I was I think for me, it's seeing Boba Fett's armor, and then who I assume is Boba Fett at the end of that first episode. I had to take a double take and actually text Nataly, going, what? Is that who I think it is? And she's like, yep. Or I assume that's what you said.
Morrison.
Yeah, where it's just, I have so many questions, and I know, and then you guys could correct me, Lucas intended for Boba to be alive, correct? To survive the Sarlacc pit, or that's what is implied?
There, from what I've heard, and this is largely coming from my fiance, who loved with so much passion the extended universe novels that exist for a long time, hence why he is a big fan of Boba Fett and Mandalorian culture. he did survive and go on to do some like really incredible things. From what I gathered at one point, he actually became like a decent friend of Han's, which is just very like ironic.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why like there is such a fixation of Boba Fett from the fans that expands what we see from the movies, because I know there's also a running joke that like he seems to be this overhyped individual because we only see so much of him, and we
have some friends that believe that for sure.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it is so cool to see the possibility of that being recovered, because there are a lot of avid fans, and so all of the texts, including yours, like that came towards me and my fiance, we're clearly not Lucasfilm spokespeople. We're 99.999%
yeah.
Where we are in the timeline in Star Wars Rebels, we have seen the matured clones of the Clone Wars era age significantly. We see Rex with a beard, so this specific individual that we see at the very end looks younger than the average clone. So that's why I'm zoning in that it is most likely Boba Fett, but who knows where the story could take us. That was an incredible Easter egg, though.
What's interesting is it doesn't seem that he's left. Like that's what's interesting to me. Is just like he seems to have stayed. Like Boba Fett has like all these skills and resources he could leave at any time, but like what made him stay? You know.
What made him not get his armor? I just feel like it brings so many questions, and I think again that's the credit to the show of hooking you in, kind of like hooking you in that first episode of the first season with like, it's a Baby Yoda. Why is there a Baby Yoda here? Yeah. Like, what's going on? So I think like for somebody that's relatively new to the universe like myself, it just gets you like, okay, what's going on here? I want to see more.
Well, and that's. I hadn't thought about that until you just said that, Cilla, but you do right at the end of the first episode in the first season they drop the bomb of Baby Yoda, and I hadn't paralleled that to showing Tamora Morrison at the very end of the second episode, the second season, first episode. I was really pleased with his armor, that it looked like it had been melted away, or the paint had been melted away, which I think just for me really fills in that in the Sarlacc's belly and what happens in the stomach acid and all of that. And so that was a really fun moment, as well as seeing Tamora Morrison at the end of the episode. But I am with him in the series. I am still holding out for Old Man Rex, live action appearance. As cheesy as it would be, I really want to see live action Old Man Rex.
I know I'll cry if I see Old Man Rex. I really
very, very pleased. One of the things that I briefly played, but was at an age where I didn't have the dedication to get into it, was Star Wars Galaxies. And I know one of the things that if you manage in the big raid to kill the Krayt dragon, you get a Krayt pearl as your part of your loot, part of your treasure. And so seeing immediately after the first episode and being online and on Reddit and all of that, and realizing that was a niche Easter egg just for the Star Wars Galaxies fans from several years ago, was just really cool, because that's such a small pocket, I think, of Star Wars fandom. But to see either Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni, presumably, put that detail in just for a moment was a really cool touch. And again, I have to say, I really appreciate that.
I think that's the only one that passed me by. I was like, I did not understand the significance. I wasn't confused. I was like, oh, there's a pearl.
Yes, there's a pearl, yeah.
I was just assuming, oh, that's really why they wanted the carcass, is because they knew there was a pearl inside or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool that they would throw a little nod to Galaxies.
Yeah.
I feel like so far the Mandalorian and Solo have done the best at nodding to a bigger universe. And
yes,
even to like old video games and stuff. Like
Yes.
Emilia Clarke in Solo when she beats up one of the guards, and the droid says, "Whoa, where did you learn that?" And she said, "Terrace Kasi," which is the Star Wars fighting game on the PlayStation, like from way back in the day.
Just that connection.
Yeah, Solo and the Mandalorian are really, really good at doing things like that.
And of course, being a big fan of the Disney parks, like I'm starting to see a little bit of that connection to Galaxy's Edge as well. The first one being in Solo, where Black Spire Outpost is mentioned, and I remember being so excited because we already knew the name of Black Spire Outpost, and this is about a year before the land opened, and the ice cream maker is actually in the queue of Rise of the Resistance. I know that there wasn't much of a chance.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I don't know I don't think I noticed that.
I know, like, we only had about a month and a half of that attraction being opened on our post, but it was pointed out to me it is in like a cargo stashed area in the queue where you would find the Resistance pilot suits. So, and just like that little what was a little inside joke for fans actually becomes something of like a pretty useful device. Is pretty funny. And I could be like over speculating here, but I couldn't help but feel that the costumes being worn in the first episode, the way they were ensemble just largely resembled the way cast members dress on Galaxy's Edge, the Batuan costume.
Right.
The accessories, like I hadn't seen such a vivid use of costumes like that. Every time we go to Tatooine, it's very, like, the colors are very dull. The colors are very worn. You can tell like, people live like very hard lives, but there was something about this small town that you could tell they like take very good care of their clothes. But I couldn't help but feel like there's going to be more attempts to connect Galaxy's Edge, and that's something I kind of selfishly hope for, is that we see Black Spire Outpost.
Me too.
I think it's I remember speculating and hoping that they would film some sort of content before the land opened, because it is very hard to film a Disney park after the fact. There is an ample opportunity to do that right now, in case anybody.
Seriously.
Like there's a whole full functional set there that would be fantastic to see one day.
Ample opportunity to do that now, but I wonder if there has been opportunity to have already done that and sort of just slip it in under everybody's noses while everything's kind of shut down. And that would be so awesome.
Batu. I think Batu. Did they mention Batu?
It's in my head, and I can't like thinking about that now.
Have they mentioned Batu in Mandalorian or anything at all?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
I could be wrong on that, but I feel like I would have fixated on that this whole time.
Yeah, you would have.
True. That's true.
Well, and it's. I think being able to connect it to Black Spire Outpost and Batu would be fantastic, and a conversation for another podcast upcoming. But the what Disney Universal are doing with live storytelling or in real life storytelling through Galaxy's Edge, Avengers Campus, and Wizarding World. But I think being able to directly connect it to a show like The Mandalorian would just be spectacular and just up the way that we can share and tell stories. So I think that would be really, really cool. Were there any Easter eggs or references that didn't work for you, that just sort of felt like, maybe that was a bit much?
For me, it was just the pearl was a little too deep for me. Because I know it's like Star Wars Galaxies, but I'm not sure what else. At first, I thought I was ready to be disappointed by the Boba Fett showing up. Because when we see him walk in, I was like, oh gosh, here we go. This is where Boba Fett's been the whole time. And he takes off the helmet, and there's kind of that moment of, it's not. And I was ready for it not to work, but I really dug what they did with the Marshall character. And you know, the fact that the armor is ill-fitting on him, I think is, you know, also adds to the Mandalorian's, you know, feelings of like, you don't deserve this armor. You should take it off. So at first I was like, oh, that's not going to work, but it ended up working spectacularly.
I'm in this same boat. As soon as he walked in the first time, and sort of through my first whole viewing of the first episode, I was just kind of like unnerved, I guess is maybe the best word to use. And just, I did not like Timothy Oliphant in Boba's armor. And then I started it up pretty much immediately. It was later that same day to do a second watch through. And I realized how much I liked that I didn't like him in the armor. And just was so immediately impressed with how well they told that story just by how ill-fitting the armor was. And it was just so good. And it took me a whole like watch through and then some to sort of realize how much I liked the way they had done that by making me not like the way they had done that.
That's a good point, because I immediately knew when I saw him like walk in full armor. I was live watching. I was using the new like Disney stream feature of like share watch with a friend. So we're texting each other, and like you see him, and she's immediately like, "Is that?" And I'm like, "No, it's not." Like you could just immediately tell how
No way.
It is
No
that
way.
I immediately knew. I saw a running joke on Twitter after the fact that he looks like the guy that just almost finished his armor in time for Comic-Con. Like I was like, but it works. It works because he is obviously found this armor to try to like scrap by and protect his town without knowing like its full extent and its use and its significance and what it means to Mandalorian culture. But like Cobb Vanth, it wasn't until the episode ended that I realized the Marshal, he was a huge Easter egg in and of itself. Again, further proof of what a good job the Mandalorian is doing at not only connecting to the films, but the animated shows, but the books. So when the episode ended, my fiance immediately went to one singular bookshelf that has all of our Star Wars books. He's read them all. I have only read a few. And he pulled out Star Wars Aftermath, which is a collection of stories that takes place immediately after the Battle of Endor. And one of them is in regards to the Beastmaster in Jabba's palace and him trying to find a new life. And he actually comes across Cobb Vanth, which is his name. And he is described as wearing the Mandalorian armor. The Beastmaster says it looks eerily similar, but he can't quite put his finger on it. But like that's just like a big hint that like he recognizes he's seen the armor, but doesn't quite piece it together that he's seen Boba Fett and that is his armor. So like Cobb Vanth is a previously mentioned character already that only a small portion of fans, which is my fiance, will have recognized. And it's a very short portion of the book. I read like his little story. It's about 4 pages long, and I wish I had read that ahead of time, because I know I would have been somebody to like have stood up and freaked out and be like, I know who that is. But it was neat to connect him because my fiance originally thought The Mandalorian was going to be about Cobb Vanth just because of the mention of the Mandalorian armor. And when it turned out it wasn't, but then we see this connection, like the satisfaction of just connecting the story was so cool to see on his face. It was really fascinating.
To continue on with just the sort of the things that worked or didn't work with the first episode, I, unlike Nataly, was initially really excited to see R5, and then was kind of like, it kind of didn't work for me beyond like, oh, it's R5. And I have not read the R5 story, so that might change that opinion. But it just felt, that Easter egg to me felt a little too much of a coincidence. Especially because there are 2 Skywalker household droids in the first episode of I guess maybe it's the first and then the second episode of Mandalorian, and the other one is a little droid that was working on one of the, I think on one of the moisture evaporators on the Skywalker moisture farm, and it's the little guy with the binocular looking head and the long skinny body with the treads on the bottom. And so R5 to me just felt like it was a little bit too big of a moment. At least for it's his purpose within the narrative of what was happening in the first episode.
Too much of a wink.
Yeah, a little too big of a wink. It would have. I think it might have been my personal perspective on this. I think it might have been a little bit better if it was just that less reference droid that was already there, and then it's a little bit subtler of a nod. But the other thing that felt like too much of a wink were the specific details of the pod racer speeder bike. And never have I wanted an object more than a pod racer speeder bike.
Yeah.
That is the coolest thing in the world. I just wish it had been a different pod racer. Same thing as sort of R5 being too big of a wink. It being, whether it's the same engine or a nod to the engine, it just felt a little too much of a, hey, look.
Anakin, because it's Anakin's engine.
Yeah, it's Anakin's pod.
Yeah. I think it would have been great if it was like Sebulba's engine or something.
Yeah, or it's, it's
practically huge, though.
That's true. It is a big thing.
It's much easier to spot, though, because a lot of people ask me, like, hey, was that a pod engine? And some didn't recognize it immediately as Anakin's. And they were like, oh, wow, okay. But I have to admit, Tim, I struggle with that one. The nostalgia in me loves it. And for me, it's because I found myself loving Star Wars through Phantom Menace, because that was the first one I watched when it came out as a kid. So I have a huge emotional attachment to the pod races, and it being Anakin's and hearing the sound effect, like, I loved it, but at the same time, I also struggle with, like, did we need specifically this particular pod?
Well, I think for me, I felt like it didn't hinder the story, like none of like the ones that might have been like too over the top.
That's true.
I feel like in comparison to like, I love Rise of Skywalker, but there are a lot of callbacks and Easter eggs to the point where it's like you're getting hit in the head with it. So I in comparison, it doesn't feel like too much. Again, certain things went over my head, but like I don't feel like it's to the point of like, whoa, what the heck was that? What are we doing here? So I thought it was balanced enough. We'll have to see as the episodes continue what that looks like. But I thought so far it's been pretty good job.
What did you guys think of the flashback sequence? Because that sequence in itself, I think, is a reference. But I'm just curious to see what you guys thought of it.
I feel like the story was simple enough that we didn't necessarily need to see it, but I was fine watching it. And it was cool to actually see, when he gets the armor and uses it to take the town back. That part was cool to see.
Yes, specifically the rangefinder.
Yeah,
clicking into place to do the targeting was very satisfying.
That very Iron Man.
Yes.
Shot like kind of
I
moment.
wonder why.
Yeah.
I really think Cilla's gonna like that part. Like, it's just a very Iron Man like move.
Yeah, as you can tell.
Yes, I see him behind
Different universe, but yeah.
But I think that whole sequence is a reference to, and I am going to get this wrong, and I apologize in advance. The second film in the Fistful of Dollars trilogy with Clint Eastwood.
Oh.
Few
dollars more. Where in the beginning of the film, he leaves his partner in crime to wander through the desert with his bag of money or whatever, to, if he survives, he gets to spend it. And then the situation flips in the film. And this was sort of the reason I didn't like the flashback. Again, the story felt simple enough that it wasn't needed. And so with when my brain linked it to a few dollars more and that whole exchange of sequences, it just felt like they were using the flashback to hit another big Western Easter egg reference, where in the first season they did it so well with Sanctuary, because that whole episode is Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven. So to have that one done so well, and then this one feel like it was a little just like tossed in there to let it happen, was a little hit or miss for me.
A few dollars more is pretty deep cut, though.
Yeah,
not necessarily something everybody knows.
That's fair. It is a bit more of a niche reference.
There are a lot of Western tributes, like the traditional Western film elements, like even in the music alone.
Yeah, the score in that episode is very Westerny.
Yeah, so they're not exactly on the nose, so I can see, Tim, where you're coming from in that, and like just like a subtle tribute that can be hit or miss.
Yeah.
What about episode 2? Space Spiders. What have you
that
think?
episode was very arachnophobic, like worst nightmare.
In terms of things that like references that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, Easter eggs in general at this point, but specifically in the episode that we just got a couple days ago.
Yeah, I really liked it was very much an Aliens tribute, that the second half of that episode, just even like when the Mandalorian's trying to shut the doors and the alien hands are coming through, is very much from Aliens. And even how
in the flamethrower,
flamethrower, and even how Baby Yoda kind of like opens up the egg, it kind of peels open like an alien egg.
Yeah,
I was waiting for a face hugger just to be there and just to panic.
The universes are connected. But yeah, I liked when they did this in the first episode too, just kind of a creature callback, which they had those little scaggy creatures that you see for a moment in episode 2 with the Tusken Raiders, those kind of scaly wolf things. And in this one is the spiders themselves that you see, not only in just the concept, it's the concept art of Hoth that Ralph McQuarrie painted, these giant cone spiders, but they are also very prevalent in the secret base in Rebels. So it was cool to see a creature callback to other films and other shows. But it was weird watching a Star Wars thing and being like really freaked out and scared. There's not a lot of that other than you could kind of feel that way maybe in like the dark side cave of Dagobah, but there's never I can't think of any moments in Star Wars where you're like pulling the blanket up to your face and going like, oh no. But that was definitely one of those moments.
Well, and I think the spiders are interesting just from a place in Rebels. They're loosely force sensitive or force aware, at least, or influenced, and it plays a huge narrative arc in that series. And so to see them show up on an entirely different planet, and a planet that I think was hinted to possibly be Ilum, and the ice caves where Jedi traditionally get their lightsaber crystals, I think is interesting. And I wonder if we're going to come back to the ice caves eventually. And
possibly, if they follow the same kind of pattern that they did in the first season, where it's most of the season was traveling from place to place, and then the end of the season was going back to all of those places.
Yeah.
We possibly might end up there again. Because I don't think it's a mistake that they happened to run into those pilots.
Yeah.
And one of them's one of the pilots we've already seen. It's Dave Filoni.
Yeah, Dave Filoni.
Again, from the last season. So I'm thinking that they're going to factor in, because if that's like part of their like patrol area, it might come back.
And can we on the topic of X-Wing pilots, can we talk about the moment that like every person who grew up going to church like jumped off of the couch for? I was sitting down, I made my morning coffee, and I'm sitting there, and it's "May the Force be with you," and it comes back, "and also with you," and I spat my coffee out because like
the way he says it is so disingenuous. It's like "May the Force be with you," and they're like, "and also with you."
With you,
thank you.
And it's just
that laughed so hard as a Catholic raised kid. That was one of the funniest things.
Because like, how often have we all made that joke with "May the Fourth be with you," specifically on May the 4th. May the Fourth be with you, and also with you, and all of that. And so to make that canon is just like, it's completely useless. As a like a narrative element, there's no point to that, but it was so funny and so wonderful, and just made like I say, like almost like an inside joke for Star Wars fans canon.
So I even loved in that scene as well when they're following the Razor Crest, and they go, "Hey, can you switch to channel 2 for a second?" And then like it kind of goes dead, and then the S-foils go into attack position.
Yes,
because I love watching these things with my wife, because I have like certain reactions to stuff like in the first episode with the Krayt dragon, and I saw like it shows the rumbling desert and stuff. I was like, no, are they going to show a Krayt dragon? And she's like, what the heck is a Krayt dragon? And same in this one, when they do that, I was like, uh-oh. And she's like, what? And I was like, they're locking S-foils in attack position, baby. We're gonna see some chasing. So.
Well, and I had the same reaction in Force Awakens in the trailer when you get the X-Wing coming across the lake, and then all the S-foils open. You're like, oh, something's going down. And then I think again in the second episode, you also have another return to the cantina. And specifically Sabak being played, which just felt like it's that aspect of it, and the pub life of Star Wars just starting to link together and connect was really, really nice. Was there anything that you really didn't like in the second episode? There's a whole lot less to pull from, but
maybe not in regards to like Easter eggs, but I feel like they kind of treated the humor aspect of the child, like getting and eating. Like, I felt like it went just a tad bit too far, and I'm aware the eggs weren't fertilized, so they're like in a sense, like the child is eating the same eggs that we scramble for breakfast ourselves.
Yeah.
So.
Which I forgot immediately, by the way. Like, they even said that they haven't been fertilized yet, and as soon as he eats one, I was like, oh no.
But also the details of like, this is the last of a generation in a line of people.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. I just felt like it got pushed a little, like just the humor aspect of the child eating everything. I'm not a parent. You'll have to tune us in soon enough if kids like how often kids eat like everything. But like I felt like it just was a little too on the nose. It was adorable. And I loved seeing it, but it just felt like a little much. Like, on top of the stress of everything from like the X-foils coming out to crashing onto that planet, to the space fighters, to like leaving the planet with a very broken ship that's like barely going by. And you add like this kid eating the eggs of a possible last generation of the sentient being. It's just a little too much.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair.
I think I have a similar criticism, just because I already know that people are getting to that saturation point with Baby Yoda. So it's like you don't want to push it too far to the point where people get turned off because they're like, oh, great, another episode that kind of sidetracks to see what Baby Yoda's doing or what mischief he's getting into. So I think it didn't bother me, but it can cross that fine line of like, well, if you keep doing this in every episode, people are not going to pay attention to the story as much as like, oh, great, Baby Yoda's in it again, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like a fine line they gotta walk.
Yeah, he's definitely a tool you got to use at the right moment.
Yeah, he's an adorable character and a wonderful character, but there's a risk of overusing the charm that he has.
Which I think that's why the point of this season is to get him back to where he came from, because you can't keep using him. He's going to lose his charm.
That's true. Looking at all the Easter eggs through the first season, through the first couple episodes of the second season, and then just the idea of Easter eggs in any series, how where does the usage of these sort of land in just fan service, and where does it really build the narrative that's being told?
Yeah, I think that's the difference between kind of, I'm not saying like J.J. Abrams did a bad job or anything, but the difference between like J.J. Abrams and like, say, like Jon Favreau is J.J. Abrams really likes to wink at the audience and go like, remember this thing and remember this and remember that. And it doesn't really succeed in making the universe feel bigger or service the story in a certain way. And if anything, it kind of makes the universe feel smaller, because it's like, yeah, we've seen that before in like the other Skywalker movies. But with things like The Mandalorian, will not like full on wink at you in the face. Like they'll kind of subtly have things in the background, like something spray painted on a wall that calls back to an event that happened in Star Wars history, or, you know, just creatures that you've seen before. And even like, I feel like the biggest one is the Boba Fett armor, but that even with that, it's like, if you don't know it's Boba Fett's armor, it's not a big deal. It's just you see that it's a man with Mandalorian armor, and the Mandalorian doesn't like that he has it. It doesn't take you away, like in kind of the later Star Wars movies. It's like, if you don't know, you're being winked at, and you're just like, I don't get the joke, you know? But I think that's where it's too much fan service, is when you're really putting it front and center, as opposed to letting it be either like an addition to the story or just something in the background for people that know to kind of enjoy that it's there.
Yeah, it has to be balanced, because if you rely on it too much, then people are not interested in getting invested. They just like, well, I missed this many things. Why should I care? And I think, like Nick mentioned, you might not know a reference, but you still understand the overall point of the story. So that's where it's useful, where, you know, again, I like the sequel trilogy, but I could see the critiques of people being like, okay, you're pushing it in my face all the time. How does this help the story? Like it feels very shallow to them, versus I feel like The Mandalorian doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't feel like we're retreading anything in Mandalorian. Even though we're seeing so many things we've seen before. Yeah. They're either pushing the story forward, or they're just kind of sitting there for people that know to appreciate.
The Krayt Dragon is kind of a great example of both. Like you don't have had to have played those games, but you appreciated the creature for the point it had in that story.
And yeah, you see the skeleton of a Krayt Dragon in A New Hope. There it is. And it's just, it's never really kind of spoken about in the Star Wars movies or even any of the animated shows or anything.
Yeah, it's just sort of there.
Yeah. But like, so when you watch the Mandalorian, you don't go, well, nobody ever talked about giant sandworms before. Like, now there's giant sandworms on Tatooine. It's like, no, they actually kind of showed you that before. And they're, here's one that's living. That's something you haven't seen before. Yeah, it's like you said, now it's a mix between both. It's something you have seen before, but it's also something you haven't because you've never seen it in action.
Well, and I think specifically looking at the Krayt Dragon just as an element unto itself connects so many different points of the original trilogy to The Mandalorian. Where either in the screenplay or in like the audio play of A New Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi mentions that he uses the Krayt Dragon cry. It was a Krayt Dragon's cry that he used to scare off the Tuskens. And adding that sort of depth to that culture that now gets played out and something that we get to see, but also with adding sign language to the Tuskens and using a hearing impaired actor to be a part of those scenes and to sort of coach everyone in those scenes of how to do that right. And just so those the Easter eggs, specifically the Krayt Dragon just does what you were saying earlier, Nick, of how it doesn't take away from the story, but it really just pours into the world around it and makes that world feel very, very real.
It's things like that make it, this whole thing, feel like a universe. That's a thing that, like, to me, that at least the later films don't do as much. Not that it was like their responsibility to do this, but it makes it feel like it is like a galaxy far, far away, and that there's like thousands of systems out there and tons of different species. It succeeds in fleshing out those locations. It's not like it's just a desert planet, it's just an ice planet, it's just a jungle planet. It's like there's like ecosystems and creatures that live there and with stories of their own. That I think is really cool.
On top of that, it makes it feel like it is an organic universe, like not just
absolutely
clearly a fantasy. But I know that like George Lucas's intention wasn't to create a futuristic, beautiful, like unobtainable looking universe. He wanted to create a fantasy universe that could feel real. And I think like even like again the Krayt Dragon, like we saw that skeleton and then we see it. So even though in this first episode of this season, while it's a near invincible creature, we see that it is organic. It can't die. Like, and we had like earlier. And I think that's why I enjoyed the R5 cameo, because it just showed like, again, these, especially on a planet like Tatooine, like things aren't very new. Things are going to be reused, recycled. And again, that just kind of makes the universe not only feel like an entirely different universe that we don't live in, but an organic, very realistic one.
Well, and on that, just one of the things that I did really like about R5 was the terrible soldering job that had been done to repair him. And it's just like this, it just, that little detail, which just like you said, Nataly, it really is this sort of back end of the universe. Everything is worn and run down to the point that, like, if we need to repair a droid, it probably isn't going to be very pretty. And it isn't. I love how Mando is using the Easter eggs to develop the world, but I think they also do a really good job of dropping some things in there, specifically in the first season, the Dark Saber, and we haven't gotten really to see the Empiric remnants in Moff Gideon yet in season 2, but knowing that Dark Saber has to play a role coming up, and just the foreshadowing in that as an Easter egg, I think is really, really fantastic for the way that they're telling the story of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, and that's another one of those things where it's like, if you don't know what the Dark Saber is, it's a unique object. It's a unique lightsaber. Yeah, you've never seen a black
lightsaber before,
and it must play a role. Like, who is this man, and why does he have this crazy object,
which
is not far away from how people that know what it is feel. Like I know what the Dark Saber is, but who is he and why does he have it? So like you're still on the same page as people who know and people who don't know.
Do any of you guys have any final thoughts on Easter eggs? Things you would maybe like to see based on what we've seen so far?
I think I would definitely love to see Black Spire Outpost on Batuu. Like I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, no, I'm going to echo that.
I'm going to hold on to hope. We did almost get Ronto wraps. We saw.
Oh.
I forgot to mention that was a fun Easter egg because I know in Galaxy's Edge the Ronto roasters, like it's roasted by a pod engine, and we get that in Anger in episode 2. And it's not Ronto meat, but if I see somebody eat like a genuine Ronto wrap on screen, I think that'll be enough of a tribute for me.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to see some Galaxy's Edge interconnected stuff. I just want them to keep going at it the way that they've been doing it, and not fully like making some callbacks like front and center, but kind of peripheral. And if they do make it front and center, like do it in like sort of like Boba Fett armor sort of way, where it's something that's going to push the story along. But yeah, I think they're doing really well the way that they're going about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you could balance it really well, then I think it's perfect the way it is. And I can't say anything in particular, but it would be cool to see some Galaxy's Edge connection, just because that is such a fun land experience.
And Wookiees. I want to see Wookiees.
I was going to say Ewoks, but I feel like that's too much.
Paul Dini, who's a great writer, has written tons of geek stuff, TV shows and things like that. I think he wrote some Clone Wars, but he mentioned one time he had an idea for an episode of Clone Wars where they had to hire a bounty hunter and they go to a place that's like like the Mos Eisley Cantina, and they're looking for this specific person. They don't know who it is, but they're like an excellent hunter. And like the camera moves through the cantina, you're seeing all these like, armored mercenaries, bounty hunters, and crazy aliens. And then like it parts and there's just a table and there's an Ewok sharpening a spear. and it's the guy that they're looking for is the Ewok. And I think they should definitely have that somewhere, like an Ewok bounty hunter.
Just amazing. Like chilling in the back of the cantina, just with a knife or a spear.
I don't know. That might go too far.
Nick, Nataly, Cilla, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for hanging out. Everybody, that is it for today's show. Please be sure that you subscribe to this channel for more geek content and hit that bell icon for more notifications. Likes also help. This episode of The Story Geeks will be on our podcast feeds. It is available on our Facebook page, and it will be available here on YouTube for time to come. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for joining us. We will see you all on the next show. Peace out, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.
May the Force be with you.
And also with you.